Hi everybody, and welcome back to your lunar update for the fortnight with me, Freya at Freya Astrology. This fortnight we are going to be talking about the new moon in Gemini, which is coming up on the 15th of June. That is a Sunday in the UK. It may be on a Saturday or a Monday, depending on where you are in the world. I might have got that wrong in the time zones, but yes, it may be on a Saturday, possibly not on a Monday. Some countries are 24 hours ahead, aren't they? Anyway, lots of Gemini information, hence all the information sharing. I'm really excited for this new moon. Let's get into it. As usual, we are going to be talking about the astrological symbolism. We're going to be talking about the planetary rulership of this lunation, what it means to be under a new moon energy. And we're also going to add in a bit about cycle tracking as well, because that is a huge part of my passion. And I love to share about marrying the lunar cycles up with our female cycles. So our reproductive cycles, our bodily cycles. So here is the new moon chart. As you can see, the chart is set for the 15th of June, 2026, which is going to be an exact new moon at 2:53 a.m. on Monday morning. Okay, so it's not on Sunday, it is on Monday in the UK, just about. And it may be on Saturday, wherever you are in the world. So here is the new moon in Gemini. As always, a new moon is when the sun and the moon are exactly together in a conjunction, which means that their energies are married together. This is the solar outward principle and the lunar inward principle coming together to create a new spark of gestation, a new spark of conception, which can help us in the coming months bring a new idea into reality and into fruition, which is typically around about at the full moon in 6 months' time. This is a seeding point. So we're not expecting big flashy results and optimization and a culmination point and being able to see everything really clearly. We're expecting to go very inward, very kind of sitting within inside our minds, because Gemini is a Mercury ruled sign. So Mercury is all about how our minds work, how our brains work, how we communicate, how we use our speech and language to portray messages or convey messages to other people via social media. Gemini is very connected with social media, as is Mercury. And communication devices, we're thinking about our phones, we're thinking about tablets, we're thinking about headphones, we are thinking about tech in general, the ways that our short journeys and forms of transport are impacting our daily lives, whether or not they are supporting us. What kinds of transport do you use? Because Gemini is very much about our daily journeys. Do we cycle places? Is that working for us? You know, are our ankles and our feet really kind of happy with the way that a bike, the pedals on a bike, impact our joints? Are our hands feeling okay? This is a big thing, because whenever we get a lunation in the sign of Gemini, we are thinking about body parts where we have multiples of, particularly the hands and the wrists and the fingers, because Gemini rules twins and duality, is that the right word? Multiples. So we're thinking we've got multiple digits and multiple hands and wrists. And I often think this with cycling on a bike, on a push bike, is that sometimes you get the impact forming on your joints as you kind of go over the bumps and things in the road that you're cycling on, or on the soft earth that you're cycling on. Your hands and your fingers and your wrist joints all have to adjust as you manipulate your hands into various positions. Maybe you're pulling on brakes, maybe you're turning and twisting to change gears, maybe you're clicking to change gears, and it's all asking a lot of all the different communication systems within our hands and our fingers. And how are those hands and fingers coping with the forms of transport that you use? So if you're a roller skater, then you're thinking much more about the feet and the ankles, but without your hands and your arms to kind of balance doing that roller skating, you would find that activity, that form of transport, much more difficult, much like with a skateboard or with a BMX. And who knew that I was going to come on here and talk about all these different types of childhood toys? Do you get to work on a space hopper, for example? if you drive a car, because I don't think in the UK at the moment we're on the driverless car thing, but I don't think it's that far behind. There is a lot of technological upload at the moment, especially with this Uranus now in Gemini, like rapidly transforming our travel requirements and our abilities to make short journeys in kind of speedier times and more efficient times. So in a person driving car, how are you finding the steering wheel and changing of the gears? We're using hands, we're using feet. It's a very Gemini activity to drive a car because Gemini is a mutable sign and there are multiple things going on. I often think of driving a car like playing a piano. It feels quite similar, or playing a musical instrument with a lot of keys, like a flute, for example. I used to play the flute. It used to just be like quite exciting for my brain to be doing that many things at once. You know, you're blowing air out of your mouth, but you're also manipulating keys, using, I was gonna say, your top fingers and your bottom thumbs. I don't know if that quite works, but using fingers on the keys, and then the thumb would be underneath the flute, pressing in occasionally on a key underneath. Every now and again, your little finger would get involved with a key at the end of the flute. And it was about stretching your fingers out to reach certain keys and bring them together to reach other keys. And it's like that with playing the guitar as well. Again, another very Mercury or Gemini activity. There's lots of strings, the fingers are doing all sorts of things, and they're constantly required to be flexible or mutable. Mutable being that astrological phrase that means changeable, flexible, interested in trying different things and staying curious about exploring the communication possibilities. So when it comes to music and musical instruments, or driving a car and forms of transport, or daily communications and messaging, or sharing on social media, how do you use your hands, your wrists, your fingers, your, carpal tunnel, your tendons? Do you like to wear jewelry on your hands? Do you like to wear a watch? Do you like to information gather about your daily life with like a fitness tracker, for example? What is your access point to these daily activities that are very mercurial, very of the mind, that keep your mind alive? Do you like to sit and do the Sudoku? Do you like to read books? Do you like to watch TV? Do you like to go for a walk? Do you like to, have you got pets that you take out for a walk? And by doing that, you meet other people on the way and it's a good morning and some of the small talk comes up. Do you work in catering and you've got a very much kind of like customer facing role where you're having lots of daily interactions with people, but they're quite short, small interactions, and you're providing that for a kind of, 6 to 8 hour period during a shift at work, for example? This is all very Gemini activities. Also writing, speech and language, singing, using your voice to do presentations. Is there a particular presentation that you'd like to formulate at this new moon in Gemini that you are not actually delivering until 6 months' time when we get the full moon in Gemini, but you're starting to work on the idea of like, am I interested in public speaking? Perhaps I am. We have got Jupiter after all moving into the sign of Leo, that very public, very solar energy, which makes us want to be brave and be on display, or it brings up our own relationship around what it feels like to be on display and be visible and be listened to and be heard. That is Jupiter is going into Leo at the end of June on the 30th. So we've got that energy coming up. So actually, if public speaking is something that you've been interested in doing, but you haven't done it yet, then this could be the beginning of building up to doing some of that public speaking over the coming 6 months to 12 months. So bringing it back to the new moon, this new moon is taking place at 24 degrees of Gemini. So if you have any planets or points, and the points being the ascendant, the descendant is not usually shown on a chart, but it's always exactly opposite the ascendant. So the ascendant here is 8 degrees Gemini, which means that the descendant is exactly opposite at the same degree of the opposite sign to Gemini. So it would be 8 degrees of Sagittarius. And then we've got the midheaven here. That's another angle. Here, for example, it's at 4 degrees of Aquarius. So the IC, the point exactly opposite the midheaven, would be at 4 degrees of Leo at this chart, in the example of this chart. So these are the angles. Whenever I talk about the angles, we're thinking about the horizon and the what is that? The vertical line and the horizontal line. I can't think of that. meridian. That might be the meridian. Anyway, we're thinking we're moving across the horizon and we're going from north to south, like pole, really. So north, south, east, west. Those are the angles in the birth chart. So bringing it back to how does this relate to you? In the birth chart, if you have any angles as just described, or planets being like the sun or the moon or Mars or Mercury or Jupiter or Venus, around 24 degrees of Gemini, give or take a few degrees. So I would say in the case of a moon, usually we give a wider orb, kind of up to 15 degrees either side. So we're talking really any planets or placements around about 5 degrees of Gemini all the way through to the next sign of Cancer. Then this new moon is impacting you more strongly. You might find that because it is a new moon, this is a more quiet new moon for yourself, particularly if it is relevant, particularly if it is making a conjunction or an opposition or a square aspect to some of your natal placements. Then this is a quiet time to go within yourself, to go within your mind. Perhaps your mind is activated more when you are making these short journeys, playing the guitar, out on your roller skates, doing the vacuuming, cleaning up cobwebs, doing other activities that allow you some sort of peripheral headspace to connect in with information that can't really come in when you are, I don't know, actually having to concentrate a bit more strongly on maybe like learning something or using your brain to calculate things, you know, like doing a Sudoku or doing sums or something like that. When you're doing more of this kind of like daily journey stuff, often there is that ability, once you've learned the skill of roller skating or cycling, there is that skill of like controlling the vehicle, but then also your mind is able to kind of wander a little bit, as obviously whilst you're still retaining some focus on safety around you and doing your physical activity to your best ability and thinking about other people's safety, then you have that ability to also allow your mind to wander. Maybe sometimes with some of these short journeys, you're able to listen to a podcast. Perhaps if you are on a walk, then maybe you have one headphone in and the other headphone out so that you can hear what's going on around you, but you're also taking in extra information. And it's from doing activities like this, where we are multitasking, that we can allow new pockets, new deliveries of divine insight to just kind of plop into the mind space. So it's just that plopping action that really takes place at the new moon. Like I said, it's not the culmination, it's not the full light on a particular topic, but it's just that delivery, you've got a new message in your inbox and now you are available to receive it and open it. It's really exciting that we've got Uranus in Gemini here at this new moon. Uranus has been in Gemini for a few months now, and it's going to be in Gemini for the next 8 years. So these new moons in Gemini for the next 8 years are going to be particularly kind of up-leveled in terms of divine insights. Those divine messages coming in and plopping into the inbox of your mind are particularly transformative. They are requiring an element of freedom and inspiration and redirection that perhaps you've not been available to before this. You know, previously Uranus was in Taurus, which is very fixed and very much trying to shift outdated patterns, whereas Gemini being mutable, Uranus is now in this mutable sign saying, I'm really open to this idea of trying something new, being curious. I want to, you know, utilize my dexterous body and be able to move it into various experiences, new positions of what does it feel like to be in the world, using my hands in this way or using my hands in that way, like in the example of using musical instruments or creating a written piece for a talk or sharing ideas on social media. It's about being flexible and being intrigued and open and curious to the freedom of where can my speech take me, where can my ideas take me. So it's quite an inspirational, exciting new moon moment. As always with that new moon, we are setting a new intention. So we are just formulating this idea about conceiving something new. We're not thinking about reaching the end of the conception point and the birth of something. We are just at the point of conception and being curious to the multiple possibilities that are coming in at this time. So as I said previously, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. So we look at transiting Mercury for extra information, and we have transiting Mercury in the sign of Cancer, which is the sign of the moon. Mercury in Cancer is taking into consideration how these new ideas that we are conceiving of at this new moon light, in this inner quiet dark moon moment, Mercury in Cancer is saying, listen to your bodily reaction to the new ideas. Listen to what your digestion says about this new idea. Are you paying attention to your bodily wisdom, or are you feeling disconnected from your bodily wisdom? There has been a lot of opportunity and outreach towards our bodily connections over the last year with Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is now finishing up in the sign of Cancer, about to move into the sign of Leo at the end of June. But Jupiter is still in Cancer at this point, at this new moon. There's a lot of bodily wisdom we have perhaps learnt about ourselves over the last year. Are we able to support ourselves with good, healthy, nutritious, digestive nutrition? Or have we found that the truth, Jupiter is very connected to the word truth, the truth of our nutrition is that it's not good for digestion. It's not providing as much nutrients as it can do. I was learning recently, it was absolutely fascinating. I am really interested in nutrition, about I was learning about macronutrients, and I was learning about pairing different ingredients together to allow one ingredient to kind of access the micronutrients or the macronutrients of another ingredient. So in the example that I was learning about, it was that having like beans on toast as being like a good protein source. I'm constantly thinking about protein and fiber sources. Being in perimenopause myself, being the age of 42, I'm constantly thinking, how can I help to balance my hormones out and provide a more balanced kind of overall physical as well as mental state for my own well-being, as well as my family's well-being, my friends, and you know how it all goes with colleagues and everything. What's the best way in which I can support myself so that I can continue to support others in their own life experience? I'm a Cancer rising, right? So I'm always thinking about how can I support other people, and reflecting that back to the self can be tricky when you're very much like, I'm thinking about how to support other people. But Jupiter in Cancer has been really good for all of us to reconnect to our own bodily needs. What are our daily needs? This is a very Cancer topic. Daily needs, it's a lunar topic. Like, what's my daily routine? What's my daily movement? What is my daily nutrition and digestion? And daily routines are also very connected to the sign of Gemini. And Mercury in Cancer here, ruling this new moon in Gemini, is saying, like, think about how it feels in the body. Think about how it feels when you're in the safety and the comfort of your own home. Think about creating your own womb space. So I am recording this on a day when we're in the middle of June. I think it should be bright sunshine and nice and warm, and we're not having to wear long sleeve tops anymore. And actually, lo and behold, it's pouring with rain. It's grey. And I'm thinking about wanting to create a womb space for myself to keep myself feeling cozy and protected. I've recently got into this activity since Jupiter has been in Cancer for the last year, in the sign of the body, bodily wisdom, the truth of our body's communication, of wearing slippers during my luteal phase. Is that right? So just after ovulation, around about day 14 of your cycle, if day 1 is the first day of your bleed, we're thinking about ovulation taking place perhaps around day 14. For me, it's shifting a bit earlier than that. So it's about day 8 or day 9 at the moment. Thanks, perimenopause. And after I've ovulated, I'm instantly like, okay, I want to start wearing slippers. I want to have warm feet. I want to have warm digits. So this is very Gemini as well. We're thinking about the fingers. Maybe we'll want to wear gloves. I mean, as this video comes out, we might be in a heat wave again. So who knows? The idea of slippers could be just like, oh no, get off me. I can't think of anything worse. But as I record this, we're taking that wisdom of bodily signals and information into our psyches. And remember that the full moon in Gemini, when we reach the culmination point of this new moon seeding point, is going to be 6 months time. So we're going to be thinking kind of December, when it is the colder months, when we probably are wanting to wear slippers, particularly in the northern hemisphere at least. We're wearing warmer clothes, and we're thinking about how can we keep ourselves cozy so that our blood flow and blood systems are feeling regulated and, you know, calmer. I think there's something really beautiful here. I don't see that there are many aspects to this particular new moon in Gemini. There is a fairly strong sextile to Chiron in Aries, which can bring in healing themes around our sense of self and advocating for self and healing through any confrontation that may have come up over the last 8 years with Chiron in Aries. Chiron is moving into Taurus very soon in the next few days, just for a brief dalliance of a couple of months, and then it's going to retrograde back into Aries. So we're not done with this healing story around self and self-expression and just being our childlike selves. But there is something here at this new moon that is bringing in the wisdom of the healing journey and allowing us to put it into words, to verbalize, to perhaps share with other people what it is to be in safety within being yourself. I think that's a really strong part of the Aries Gemini sextile aspect. And we're also bringing in another body part here because we're thinking about the sign of Aries. So we're bringing in the head and anything that belongs within the head. So perhaps the mouth or the eyes, the brain. I think about mental health is always going to be accented at a new moon in the sign of Mercury, particularly the sign of Gemini. And when there's a sextile from Aries, the body part that rules, the zodiac sign that rules the body part of the head, we're thinking about marrying up some healing between like the brain, the head, and our vocabulary, and being able to express what it is that we need to create desirous outcomes, particularly with Uranus here in Gemini as well, which is giving us stronger downloads than we have previously received in this lifetime around how to verbalize this healing journey. Just going back to the body parts and the zodiac signs, this being a new moon ruled by Mercury, and Mercury currently being in the sign of Cancer. Cancer rules things like digestion, as I've said, but it's the stomach, it's the breasts, it is to some extent the reproductive organs, but it's more the kind of protective casing around the reproductive organs, hence the stomach, and keeping things cozy and warm. It also rules things like fat, and I always think of dairy products here. I know there's been a lot of digestive issues over the last year with I need a break. With Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, in the sign of the stomach, expanding stomach issues. So if you've been struggling with any kind of niggling stomach issues, or, you know, soreness around the breast, perhaps that's been part of your monthly cycle, is more breast tenderness, then that may start to shift when Jupiter moves into Leo. But obviously, if you're experiencing any kind of health stuff, then please go and get checked out by a doctor. You know, astrology is never a substitute for seeking professional help when it comes to health. And so what's really lovely here is that we have something called a mutual reception, which I have to admit, out of things like dignities, exaltations, planetary rulerships, new moons, full moons, secondary progressions, all the different techniques in astrology, one of my favorite things is mutual reception, in terms of the way that we just have this lovely back and forth communication going on between two planets. So in the example of this new moon chart, we've got the new moon in the sign of Mercury, and Mercury in the sign of the moon, or in this case, in the sign of the new moon. And we've got also an exalted Jupiter alongside. So there's a really lovely conversation going backwards and forwards, like a really nice game of ping pong or tennis, when you've got a really good rally going and you don't want it to stop. There's an episode of Friends, really showing my age here, when they are throwing and catching a ball. I think even like Monica decides to ring in sick for work because she realizes that the boys have been throwing and catching this ball for like 4 hours straight. So she's like, I need to get on this, because she's like particularly competitive. And they keep this ball going backwards and forwards for like, I don't know, 16 hours or something like that. And one of them falls asleep and many of them just give up. But Monica's like there at the end still like, no, we can keep going. And that is like this beautiful moment, like before the game ends and well beyond the beginning of the game, where you've just got this rally going and you're just really enjoying the vibe that is being created. And I think there's more here about that bodily wisdom and that healing journey, about just being unapologetically ourselves, our inner child, and our ability to communicate that with words, with divine downloads coming in, and also with our bodily wisdom, our bodily intelligence, which has been talking to us over the last year, giving us a lot of information about how well does my body respond to different things. And I think also importantly, if you are in a period of midlife and you are in like a perimenopause phase, or you are a ovulating woman, or even a postmenopausal woman or a menopausal woman, I think that's the correct terminology. The last year has taught us a lot about when the moon is doing certain things in the sky, which will be activating certain parts of your birth chart, certain parts of your life, as it does go through every single part of your life in a 28-day period or a month. Then we're experiencing the way that our body talks to us each month and the messages that she is delivering. So there's a lot of embodied insight that is just connected to a feeling, but we are now being able to start to communicate this. If you are thinking about starting a journaling practice, or a writing practice, or a voice note practice, share, like record your voice, use that as a diary, share your thoughts on social media if it's something that you do. If you're a particularly open person, you want to share your daily routines with people. I was talking to a friend yesterday, I love when people share their wellness journeys, or just like, I just think people are absolutely fascinating. So sharing like what people think about on a daily basis and just sharing that with the world, I just think is like really interesting. So if that's something that really speaks to you, or learning a musical instrument, or learning to roller skate, or learning to ski, whatever it is that you're interested in learning, this is a great time to set an intention to learn that thing. Gemini is the student. It's very much about, let me start to gather the facts and the information about this new topic. And there is a lot of mental energy that goes into learning something new. Have you ever noticed that time moves much more quickly when you're learning a new skill, because things are unfamiliar to you, they're novel. And as they become more familiar to you, time slows down because you've got that thing mastered and you're understanding how it works. But this is about things being novel, being curious, and starting new things. Yes, so we've got the idea of information sharing, gathering facts, gathering information, and the fact that this new moon is ruled by Mercury in Cancer. So we've got this ebb and flow of feelings, which are kind of changing on a regular basis. The other interesting thing about this new moon in Gemini being ruled by a Mercury in Cancer over here is that we have just entered, over the last couple of days, the pre-Mercury retrograde shadow phase, which simply put means that when Mercury goes retrograde in Cancer later on this month, Mercury is going to come back to, it's actually 16 degrees. So we moved into the pre-retrograde shadow just like a day or two before this new moon. So Mercury is going to retrograde back to 16 degrees of Cancer before it turns direct again. So if you have got, the way to see if this is really relevant to you and your own life experience is to see if you have any planets or angles around about 16 degrees of Cancer, give or take, maybe 5 degrees either side. So we're thinking, 11 to 23, hopefully the maths is right there, degrees of Cancer, to see if this is really a strongly impactful Mercury retrograde for you. But bigger than that, this new moon story, because the Mercury retrograde is over within 3 weeks when it begins, that is. But when we add in these shadow phases either side, it adds in a kind of longer part of the story. But the larger story is this new moon in Gemini, which will culminate in 6 months' time. So when we think about that rulership, do you see how like we add in this extra information, it becomes so much more than just about the Gemini house in the birth chart. It also pulls in the Cancer house in the birth chart, pulls in the Aries house in the birth chart. And then if you have any planets or angles in the opposite sign to Gemini, Sagittarius, it calls that house birth those house topics into your new moon experience, and any of the other mutable signs, which are Pisces and Virgo, then it also pulls in those house topics to your new moon experience. So you get a lot of different house activations depending on how much or how little you want to explore this idea of the new moon and what you might like to be seeding at this time and bringing into manifestation. If you want to keep it really simple, simply look at the Gemini house in your birth chart to see which house is activating this conception point right now that will be building to fruition over the coming 6 months. If you want to make it more complicated, add in the Cancer house of your birth chart, add in the Aries house, and then, like I said, if you've got planets or points in any of the other mutable signs, because mutable signs are ruling this Gemini new moon, then we're thinking Pisces, Sagittarius, Virgo, and Gemini, because those signs are receiving a tense aspect from this new moon, which means that there is a stronger call to work hard towards something. It's not just things flowing towards us, which might be the experience if you have planets or points in the sign of Libra or Aquarius, the other air signs, therefore, which are just free flowing to this Gemini energy. There's a lot of free flow energy going into this new moon, lots of air energy, lots of mental energy. So do think about things like looking after your mental well-being, looking after any kind of migraine or headache symptoms, because they can be intensified, because the desire of air signs is to think a lot and share ideas, but sometimes that can get very overwhelming. And particularly with Uranus now in Gemini as well, there is an inability sometimes to stop that mental urge to communicate, talk, share, look at screens, constantly be on phones, constantly using our hands. And it is really important to remember that we do need to rest as well. So just remember to lean into that bodily wisdom that we've been working on over the last 12 months, and you will be kind of well supported in receiving as much of that divine download that you can from the Uranus in Gemini, which has great information in it. But when we're receiving like too much and we're unable to kind of sort what's actually good quality and what is just annoying background noise, then that can lead to things like migraine, overstimulation, lack of sleep, and running on fumes, as opposed to resting, stopping. Earlier, I had too much caffeine. I came home, I knew I needed to record a few videos for astrology, and I was like, if I do not get some food into me now, and it has to be good quality as well, I was really thinking about, I need to get some protein in because I was feeling really hungry, and the desire was just to reach for all the quick fix sugar hits, like grapes and muffins and just cookies and anything like that. But I was like, if I can just slow myself down for 10 minutes, I can boil some eggs, and that will be a really good protein source, and that will lay a good foundation. Again, this is something I've been learning over the last 12 months, bodily wisdom, nutrition wisdom, that will lay down a good solid foundation that I can then eat the grapes and the cookies on top. But I'll probably feel less like I want to eat those things because I will feel more full and more satiated. I think satiety has been a strong thing, a strong image and experience that's come in since Jupiter's been in Cancer, and it will still be in focus with Mercury being in Cancer now for so long. And Mercury is actually going to be in Cancer until August due to the retrograde. So because of the pre-retrograde shadow ruling this new moon in Gemini, I think there's some really interesting maternal, like mothering, parenting, familial, roots, home, family, nutrition insights that are yet to be uncovered, which are going to support our experience of moving some of these more exciting, idealistic possibly, and illuminating ideas being formulated at this new moon in Gemini with a Uranus in Gemini. We'll be more able to bring those things to the light in 6 months at the full moon point from this new moon point, because we have got a Mercury retrograde in Cancer, allowing us that time to retreat, rest, revisit, rework, move back into spaces we have formally been in, but in perhaps a new way, wearing a new outfit, or using, I don't know, maybe you've got a yoga practice and you're revisiting some old yoga poses and you're trying new ways of achieving those. And this is a great Mercury retrograde for being able to embody our emotional wisdom, really. So yeah, thinking about cycle tracking, if you have a moon or a ascendant in the sign of Gemini, then this is a particularly strong new moon for you to either start cycle tracking or to check in with your cycle tracking over the previous months or years, however long you've been doing it. And I do think, having learned from the best, from Emily at Nourish Yoga, go and follow her on Instagram, she's amazing, that the longer you cycle track, the deeper you can go with that wisdom, and the more illuminating it can be for us, the more we can learn about ourselves, about our daily routines, about our psychological responses to things. And one of my favorite things, and I think I've probably said it every month, but I'm going to say it again, and I'll probably keep saying it to infinitum, is to, on day one of your cycle, track to see which zodiac sign the moon is in on that day. I mean, you could even take it deeper and see which part of the lunar cycle the moon is at. So for example, if this is day one on Monday the 15th of June and you start your bleed at this new moon in Gemini, then you are going to look to the whole sign house in your birth chart of Gemini to see, okay, so my cycle or my bleed is related to this life area at the moment, and then see if you get a repetition of that in over the next month, over the next couple of months, or to see if there are shifts, you know, in the next month. Perhaps did your bleed start when the moon was in Sagittarius and there's quite a strong shift and kind of different kind of pattern forming, and was it at the full moon as opposed to the new moon? And just track that, because the moon has so much wisdom that she can share with us when we are tracking with our own bodily cycle. I mean, it's almost like they are one and the same. Our bodily cycles are very connected to the lunar cycles. And yeah, and just see, you know, do you start your bleed at the first quarter moon, which in this example would be when the moon is in the sign of Virgo. Sagittarius would be the full moon, and then the last quarter moon would be the sign of Pisces in the example of this this chart, for example. But yeah, just see where the moon is landing, which zodiac sign it's in, and you can use a free software online like astro.com to check. Just click on the current planets setting and it will give you the information as to what zodiac sign the moon is in. And that can give you a lot of information about like which body parts to pay attention to, you know, like me and my feet, you know, I'm wanting to put slippers on my toes every time I'm reaching that luteal phase. And I know there's wisdom in that. I know it's not just a quirky one-off thing that is happening. It's something, it's my bodily wisdom talking to me. So that is the new moon in Gemini update. And just to briefly say that I am available for one-to-one readings. If you check out my website, I will link it below. You can book in. There's currently not a scheduling system on there, but you can always send me an email at astrologyfreya@gmail.com. That's the whole word astrology and then FREYJA@gmail.com. Or you can contact me on Instagram or on TikTok or on the comments below. And we can be in touch and set up an astrology reading. I would love to see you come along for your solar return reading. We get a birthday reading every year, which sets out different patterns and different plans and different expansion opportunities for your year ahead. So your birthday is a really nice time to have a little check-in with the astrology, with the planets, to see what is being brought to light over your next year of life and what's taking place in yours and your family's lives, for example. It was really lovely to see you, and I'll see you again at the next lunation. Take care.